All right, I was on X yesterday, and John Wake posted a post and says, "Are there any U.S. builders making Levittown-style developments today?" So basically, the question is the post-World War II housing boom, the 1940s. We had a lot of returning GIs, and so the U.S. kind of went into the first suburban market where they started mass-producing houses. A lot of small builders were building, a lot of blocks of these starter homes, which were Cape Cods, expansion bungalows, those kind of housing. So, can that be replicated today? Can we build smaller? And my contention is it's illegal to do that. So I'll start out here and show you the post. And so he says, "Are any U.S. builders making Levittown-style developments today? Huge 1,000-acre development to start, small 750 to 1,000 square foot, cheap homes on big lots. Why or why not?" So they were building on probably a third-acre lots up to a half-acre lots. That was kind of the beginning of suburbia as we know it. The 1920s started, but they were more inner ring where they had the alleys in the back, or yeah, in the old town where you had the alley down the back. And then in the 1940s, they started going to the more traditional suburban lookout, where you had the big lots and the streets, the neighborhood subdivision, all accessible by car. So why don't we do subdivisions like that anymore? Small houses on big lots. The reason is money. So the land costs get pretty expensive. And the reason land costs get driven up is the amount of land that's available to build on. You can't just buy any piece of land and build on it. You need to be within a municipality that will allow that to be developed, to be subdivided. So either the county or the city, usually the city, if you're within something to be subdivided, it's usually within a city, will need to approve any sort of development plans. And then they're going to have certain criteria that you have to abide by. You're probably the developer, being you, will have to pay for infrastructure. You're probably going to have to pay for sewer access, water access into the subdivision, and then provide for the fees for the municipality to connect to the main and whatever their infrastructure is. So you have all these hidden costs on infrastructure going into it. And then you have the amount of land that is willing or available to be developed is greatly reduced, therefore driving the original land cost through the roof. So land is much more expensive to begin with. And then you have the SAC and WAC fees, which are sewer access, water access. And then the municipalities, cities often put on different junk fees like park dedication fees. Like they're going to fund their pet projects with basically extortion to approve development. Say, well, we can do park dedication fees, so therefore give us $300,000 that we use for a park somewhere. So that all that stuff, all that infrastructure is funded by these developers. So in order to meet all these requirements, the developers have to get a return off of that land. And when you use one house on a third of an acre, you chew up a lot of that land cost. Now, if you can get a much more expensive house and jam it much closer together on a postage-sized lot, you get a much higher yield to cover all that overhead. Now, this is exactly what the American consumer wants, right? Maybe a little bit bigger of a house, but this is what everyone dreams of. That's kind of the American dream that everyone bought into. And that really doesn't exist anymore with our infrastructure and land costs. So how do you resolve that? You're going to have to work with the cities, the NIMBYs, the neighbors, not in my backyard, to allow more development to get approved and open up more land. So that would reduce land cost, and then kind of get rid of the park dedication fees and stuff like that. So I don't know if we can ever go back to this, because now that that ship has sailed, it's hard to bring back to the harbor. So that's where we're at with the subdivisions. So then he goes on later to show that I want to share this tab instead. Here we go. So this is kind of your 1940s Cape Cod. This one is a Cape Cod. And then the expansion bungalow is basically the same thing, except the expansion bungalow, the door isn't usually in the center. It's offset one direction or the other. And then the Cape Cod will have the staircase in the center. My phone's blowing up here. The Cape Cod will have the staircase in the center, versus an expansion bungalow. It'll probably be on the side between like the kitchen and the bedroom, or one of those sides. So these are illegal to build as well. So what do I mean by illegal? So the codes have changed where you cannot build this house legally anymore. One is you can start with the framing. You can't use 2x4 frame walls. You have to go to a 2x6. Okay, so that adds cost. And then you have additional insulation. That's why you went to a 2x6, not for strength, but for added insulation, so energy codes. And you can't use these old windows. You're going to have to go to a much higher efficiency window for energy codes as well. And that's all reasonable. Okay, so that makes sense. And then you're going to get into the staircase here. The staircase, that does not meet code anymore. So to meet the code on the tread and riser distances, you're probably going to have to add 2 or 3 feet width on the Cape Cod, or length on the expansion bungalow. So you end up, let's say you have to come out 2 feet, and you have to run that all the way across. That's 60 square feet. Okay, so now you've just expanded that envelope because you had to make the staircase meet code. And then once you get upstairs, now this roof line, I'm pointing to the wrong image here, so yeah, here we go. So here's that staircase. If you bump this out 2 feet by 60, by 30 feet, you're at least 60 feet. You may have to go out 3 feet, you're at 90 feet. So you're expanding that envelope. And then that's that creep of that housing getting bigger and bigger. And then same with the staircase going into the basement. So the envelope has to be bigger just to accommodate that one simple code change on staircase tread and riser height. And then you have upstairs, which is, this is an expansion bungalow, and the idea was these returning vets, that generation, they could afford to get into this house and have 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and bathroom on the main floor, have a basement below, and certain different markets. Some areas of the country don't have basements, but where I'm from, we do. And then upstairs was an expansion attic, and that was left unfinished. So that was a way that as these young couples got into their first house, they had expansion for their family to go up there, and they could finish that off and then have kids' rooms upstairs. But that's illegal today. You can't do that. So if you finish off this space, put an access up there, the code's going to require you to finish that off. So you can't just leave that unfinished. And then the other thing you can't do on this anymore is the insulation. You're going to have a much thicker insulation, and you're going to have that knee wall kind of comes in this area. So you're going to have this whole roof lifted up to create more room for that insulation. And then you're going to have you're probably going to have to dormer that out to make that width work. So this design itself is not going to work. So this was a family of 4, 700 square feet. Can we do that today? No, it's illegal. The panel boxes were cheaper, the furnaces were cheaper, everything on it was less expensive, and every little code adds additional cost. So we can't do this anymore. So when you take a kitchen, a bathroom, and then you got the windows, so let's say you have 2 windows, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 12 windows. Those are your expensive items, the kitchen, bath, windows. Foundation, you're going to save a little bit by keeping that structure small, but you had to increase that envelope to meet code. And then the roof, you're going to have to expand that up. You're going to add additional costs there because of code as well. And then that's your expensive item. So now let's say you need to increase a little bit of profit to cover the land costs. To add a little bit of square footage without adding a window, a bathroom, a kitchen, you're just adding wall and sheetrock. That's not that expensive. So a big house will have 20,000 into the kitchen, whatever, 20,000 into a bathroom. So does this little house. So per foot, these little houses get very expensive. So there's not a ton of cost savings because you have all the expensive items that have to meet all the same codes as the more expensive, bigger houses. So we've basically outlawed the starter home and made it very difficult for a young couple to get started. So we'll go over to this. This here, this is kind of your, I won't call this a Cape Cod. Some people will call it a Cape Cod, but this is more of an expansion bungalow. You're going to have the windows that are a little offset. This is probably your kitchen in here. That's probably your living room. And then your staircase is probably coming up the back side. So all these are kind of cookie cutter and very simple construction. We really need to get back to something like this, but unfortunately we're tripping over ourselves with zoning and building codes. The Cape Cod is more your classic, share this tab instead. You'll have the door directly in the center, and you're going to have matching windows, either one set of two or one set of one on each side of that door, and then the staircase is going to go up the middle. That's kind of the traditional Cape Cod, and then this one's got a little addition built out the back. So here's another, different examples of it. And then there's other starter homes. As we went into the 50s and 60s, you could get in, they increased the home size a little bit to start absorbing some of the costs as the families expanded. It's unfortunate. We're trying to improve the safety of houses is where the code started, and that made a lot of sense, right? There were things that we could improve, and for a little bit of money, you had a huge impact. But now it's turned into, when you get into the codes, you have the people that are sitting on these companies, the manufacturers for like electrical equipment. These manufacturers have people on the board that creates the zoning or the building codes for electrical. So then you get diminishing returns, right? So they'll create a product called an arc fault breaker. And then that, if it pulls too many amps, it's going to trip right away versus like a ground fault interrupter. If it hits water, it'll short out and trip. So the arc fault, like let's say you start up a circular saw, it's going to draw a lot of amps right away, or a refrigerator pulls a lot of amps right away, and then it'll trip that breaker. So they put this in there so they can sell more outlets. That's the kind of stuff that's going into building codes today, and it's creeping, and it's just inching up costs left and right. So that's kind of what's going on in the industry and what needs to change. I don't know how you get that ship to reverse at this point, but he is definitely right. We do need to build smaller homes, starter homes, and to do that, we're going to have to tackle some ugly truths on our building codes. Building codes are great when it's for safety, but when it's to sell manufacturers' products, it has an inverse effect, and it starts hurting the U.S. consumer. So those are my 2 cents. I'm going to head out of town, go ice fishing here, so I'll check in probably early next week. And if you got any questions, shoot them in the message. I'll be able to access here, but I just won't be able to do a video for a few days. So have a good one. Take care. All right, bye.